Welcome to the Legal Soft Podcast. My name is Cameron Hastings. I'm here with Mariya Furman. She's our in-house attorney and in charge of law practice growth. So we're going to go ahead and chat with her what incubation means in the legal soft atmosphere and also what magic law is. Mariya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Cam. I'm happy to be here.
So first thing I wanted to ask you was, I know that us here at LegalSoft, we have something called incubation, which we help practices get set up. But what goes into that?
So incubation is basically when we have an attorney who wants to open the firm, but they don't know how to set up the practice. It's very complicated process to go from, basically you don't just put your shingle out and say, okay, I'm here to take cases. It doesn't work like that anymore nowadays. There is a lot of details from marketing standpoint, administrative standpoint, setting up the office, setting up the staff, establishing the workflow for the staff, and just making sure that the attorney is just ready to jump in and practice law, take care of their clients, go to court, and just work the legal aspect of the practice. And that's where we come in and we set everything up. There are two different options that we have. We have the practice setup, which is only for the first maybe 3 months or so when we help the attorney get started, and from then on, they're on their own. We figure out the staffing, we figure out the marketing, we start their website, we everything that they need to kind of take off and move forward. That's the practice setup part. The incubation is when we kind of manage all of the what goes on in the law firm on the back end. So we also monitor the staff. We also making sure that they're doing the job, that they're we're setting up the intake team. We're monitoring how they're signing up the cases. And there is also a financial aspect to it. Incubation is when we kind of become partners with the law firm. We're investing into the law firm ourselves. So incubation is more for attorneys who do not have the finances to invest into their practice right away, because not every practice is going to bring money in as soon as you take the case, because some of them, it can take a year or two for the cases to start settling, for the money to start coming in. So that's when we come in and we become the partners with the attorneys, and we provide whatever is needed to run the office until, the law firm, usually for it would be like for a few years, like 3 to 5 years.
Gotcha. And then we hand it off.
And then we hand it off, or we can continue it. It depends on, how the attorney wants to go forward, because sometimes if it works great, it's kind of like you have a managing partner in your law firm that handles everything on the back end, from marketing, hiring, HR, all the stuff that you need. Because, I mean, I had my own law firm in the past. It's like having two full-time jobs. You are an attorney and you're also a business manager, you're a business owner, and sometimes that takes a lot of time. And it's like you work 24/7.
Right. I mean, how much does it cost to start your own firm? I mean, the startup costs alone, that must be difficult.
Yes, it depends on the practice area, because some of them have a much longer time to start generating revenue. Um, so, for example, you have cases that attorneys take on contingencies. So it could take, a year for the case to settle and for attorney to get paid. And you need to keep the practice going for that year. You need to fund everything. You need to pay the salaries. You need to do the marketing so more cases are coming in. There are also costs associated with the cases. You have your filing fees, your expert fees, your deposition fees, whatever you can think of. Those practices are more expensive. The ones where the attorney gets paid as they go, those are easier to set up because you start generating revenue right away as soon as you start billing your billable hours.
Right, right. And on those cases that may not even settle for a year, you're still paying the costs. The case is costing you money at that point
Yes.
until you eventually settle.
So generally, attorneys need to have several 100,000 saved up if they want to open their own office without outside help or obtaining financing, loans. It can be a very costly thing to open up your own practice, especially if you don't have a big stash of money.
Right. And I mean, a lawyer just getting out of law school, likely not to have a big stack of money,
For
right?
sure,
I mean,
yes.
it just depends.
I mean, getting out of law school is very hard to start your own practice right away because you're still learning how to be a lawyer.
Did did you start your practice right away? Or what was that process
Almost.
like?
Almost. I started my practice after about a year and a half or 2 years out of law school. So I did have a little bit experience working at different law firms, seeing how things are going. And for me, like we didn't have like LegalSoft didn't have the incubation project at that point yet, which would have been great. It would have been super helpful because we had to find the money, kind of work one case, get paid, invest that money into getting the next case, and so on. So it took a while to kind of take off and build it up to a point where it was just going smoothly and generating revenue and covering all the expenses, and for the attorneys to get paid.
Right. Yeah, and making that move from operator to owner to that transition must be rough as well, especially owning your own firm. You want to make sure that there's a quality aspect to it, but also you don't want to work 70, 80 hours a week, right?
Correct. Yeah, there is no way around working 70, 80, 100 hours a week if you're opening your own firm and you're doing everything. You're working all the cases. You're working all the business side. And a lot of times people um, think that, well, I'm just going to practice law and work the cases and everything else is just going to fall into place. No, it's the other way around. You need to have your business foundation first, and then you can do the work. Because if you don't have the business end taken care of and it's not properly organized, it's just everything is just going to be a mess.
Yeah, have you seen firms just go down in flames simply because of lack of management or lack of proper positioning?
I've seen firms constantly operating in crisis mode and in a state of utter chaos simply because nobody ever sat down and made a structure from the beginning, and everything just kind of built up on top of the other. It's like, building blocks. You're just like, okay, I need more. I'm going to put that on top. I need another one. I'm going to put that on top. And then you dedicate all your time and effort in making sure the structure doesn't collapse on your head,
Mhm.
and you're putting out fires all day long when in reality, like if you built it from the ground up with the proper foundation, planned ahead, made the proper structure of the business, then you can be more proactive. You can do better on your cases. You're not just reacting to stuff that is being thrown at you. You're working the cases much better as well. You have the right staff. You have all the systems in place.
You go on the offensive as opposed to being just stuck
Correct.
in defense mode. That makes total sense.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, your time as an attorney, having your own firm, what made you make the transfer to LegalSoft?
I realized that I like the idea of growing a law firm a lot more than I like to actually practice law.
Oh yeah.
So, yes, and I'm sure that every attorney at some point thinks, you get an ex parte notice on a Friday and you're like, why am I doing this? So, but but I really enjoyed the business aspect of the legal practice. I enjoyed hiring staff. I enjoyed training the associates, paralegals, and setting up the workflow for them and teaching them how to practice law, how to help the clients, how to provide customer service. And I believe that this experience is really helping me right now because this is in essence what I'm doing. I'm managing multiple law firms
Mhm.
and I'm doing what I like, and they're dealing with the law part.
As part of the incubation and the practice setup, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
so interesting. Now, what's the worst scenario you've gotten into where we show up to a firm and they're just, I mean, what's the most square one situation you've been in?
Um, well, from the very beginning, we start from the ground up. So I wouldn't say that this is like the worst case. There is no worst case scenario. When we're doing incubation, we're starting the firm from the ground up. We are at like the absolute zero, so to say.
That's
So
starting spot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it is easier in a way because we're then putting everything in place. We're not coming into a firm that's been running for several years and everything is a total mess and nobody wants to make changes because they finally figure out how to navigate this mess, and it becomes a lot more complicated than if you put everything in its correct place from the get-go.
Right. It's like training someone the way you want to have something done versus what they've been taught for years and years.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
that makes total sense. I did want to get into, speaking of training, our virtual staffing has some pretty intense training that they go through in order to help with incubation and practice setup. What does that look like for the average firm? And what kind of
Mhm.
staffing are we talking about?
It can be for anybody. Let's say you need staff to do your client intake. So we have training modules for intake staff to teach them how to answer the phones for incoming calls, how to screen clients for determine whether or not those are good cases, how to sign them up, or if they need case managers, we have training for that. If they need admin staff, executive assistants, legal assistants, back end IT marketing, whatever it is they need, we will be able to train their staff for specific roles that they need. We also can provide them with attorneys that would be working remotely. Um, Obviously, most of them are licensed in other jurisdictions, but it would be kind of like a step up between a paralegal and an attorney. So somebody with a high level of training that is knowledgeable about, U.S. law and legal systems, but we'll be able to train them on the specific states or specific industry.
Right. The virtual attorneys we have, they can pretty much do everything except filing, right?
Yeah, they're not allowed to uh basically say I am an attorney, I am practicing law. So that's the only thing. They cannot go to court and say I'm an attorney, I represent this client.
Right.
But they can do so much more than a paralegal simply because of their level of education. They're knowledgeable on how to do research, how to write memos and motions, how to work on case settlements. They'll be able to do a lot more than a paralegal or case manager.
Right, that makes total sense. Now, I've heard of cases of some of the clients that we have that the law firm owner doesn't actually do almost anything. They show up to court and get paid. And then they have their attorneys, their virtual attorneys just handle everything else. How viable is that? Is that a possibility for most firms?
It's possible. You need to have a perfect structure. You need to have your staff. You need to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, that there is like quality control at every step. There is nothing worse than showing up to court and realize you have a wrong file in your hand,
Oh,
or that the documents you're supposed to bring in or the documents that were submitted incorrectly. Nothing is Things are not labeled the right way, and it's just something that you need to have a certain level of trust in your staff that they can do this so that you can just show up to court, have everything ready, and you're good to go. But to get to that point, you need to make sure that everybody's doing their job.
right, right. And how do you do that? What's the difference between quality control and micromanaging? Because a lot of teams, obviously, they don't like that buzzword, micromanaging, but a lot of times that's how you can get things to be done the specific way you want them to be done. But how do you navigate that line?
Training. So you train people, and then you need to train people not just okay, you do A, B, C, D, but as they kind of grow with the firm, as they get more experience, you also train them how to solve problems. If something comes up, don't just put a note on it saying this is missing. How do you get what's missing? How do you fix it? So, and you have multiple levels of staff. So you have your kind of, your intake staff, your case manager, you have your senior case manager, you have multiple levels of quality control over whatever was done on the level below.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, and that's where we can come in and do either as a practice setup or as incubation, where we develop that structure for the firm. We find the people for each step. And at first, obviously, the attorney has to not micromanage, but be actively involved in the training to make sure that everything is being done the way the attorney wants.
Yeah.
Because we can set it up, but we need the attorney to tell us, this is how I want to practice my cases. This is what I need to do.
Right. I like my demand letters this particular way.
Exactly. Because we're not there to teach the attorney how to practice law. We're there to make sure that the firm does what the attorney needs the firm to do.
And is positioned right for scaling too. We run into that a lot. Is what I've heard that we run into a lot is complaints of, oh well, I had to actively stop taking cases because I had too many cases. I didn't have the right intake staff. I didn't have they weren't structured correctly. And that's just leaving money on the table. I mean, even if you refer the case out, that's at least something, right? But a lot of attorneys don't do that. So how can an attorney know when's the right time to scale up versus keeping things status quo?
It depends also like on the practice area and how the firm does things, but we do have we do make a plan for the firm. So for example, we would say for every 50 cases you get, you need another case manager. For every X amount of leads you get per day, you need another intake person. And at some point, maybe it's going to be time to hire another in-house attorney because there's just, the court's calendar is all filled up and you need more people to actually go to court. But that's a good problem to have. It means you have a lot of cases coming in and you have a lot of work, and it means you're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Attorneys. So yes, it is, but it is something that needs to be planned in advance so that the attorney is ready for when the cases are coming in and they're not just swamped and once again going back on the defensive when all they do is put out fires because there are just way too many cases and they're just trying to juggle them the best they can.
Right. It's about structure, right? Making sure that you're properly set up to scale. Not that you're scaling right away, but that you're set up in the future to do that. And I think that's really cool that we've seen at LegalSoft as a whole. We've seen so many scenarios that we can see the signs of somebody, oh, you're going in this direction. We need to do this to fix it, right? We can fireproof something before it's a fire.
Correct. Because I know a lot of times people think that, well, I'm not there yet. I'm not that busy yet. And it's something that you need to plan for in advance because when you're busy, you're now too busy to train your staff. You're too busy to hire the best person for the position. You're just scrambling and you need somebody to fill in, like to plug in the hole where it's leaking. You're not growing in the best way possible. It's kind of like all chaotic again. So it's something that should be planned in advance. Like once you're at a certain point, that's when you start looking for another person or another intake, another case manager, another attorney.
Just have everything timelined out like that.
Yeah. So it's not like, well, everybody's too busy and now putting in overtime, I think it's time to start looking for somebody else. No, it's like you planned that a couple of months ago. So when now everybody is busy, you already have a person that's going to take over that workflow and nobody needs to put in overtime. Nobody's stressed out. Nobody's panicking, freaking out, having to work on the weekends and stuff like that.
Right. And I mean, I think that can really help with culture too within the firm, right? I mean, relieving stress is probably one of the biggest things that contributes to culture. Let's chat about, I'm kind of curious what goes into, what is Magic Law Group? How does that fit into the structure of incubation and practice growth? How does that work?
All right. So, as you know, like part of LegalSoft, we can also help firms with like lead generation and marketing. That takes a huge investment. some, you need to put in 10, 20, 50,000 a month into lead generation to truly like get a lot of cases coming in. Um, and not everybody has the resources to do that, especially right away. So what we can do as Magic Law Group, we're a law firm, so we do the marketing campaign. We invest the money into lead generation. We have a big intake team, and then we can get those cases and we can refer them to our partner attorneys. So instead of paying for lead generation, or in addition to paying for lead generation, the attorneys can get the cases from us at no upfront cost. And it works just like a regular case referral between attorneys. So they're just paying a referral fee once the case is settled, or there's a verdict, or if they're doing billable hours, like once the invoice is paid.
Interesting. Okay, so at what point, what parts of the funnel are we cutting out by getting those referrals from Magic Law Group?
You're cutting out lead generation and probably a huge chunk of any kind of marketing advertising costs. You're cutting out the costs of having a fully staffed intake team for the firm.
You don't need any intake fee?
I mean, you can still do your own intake and marketing and get the leads organically, because obviously firm is probably going to have calls coming in and people coming in from other sources. But I mean, we have firms like for whom we're basically the main source of cases. So potentially, yes, you can cut out the intake team altogether.
I was going to say, do you have firms that are 100% referral?
I wouldn't say that it's 100%, because it's something that attorneys do want to have people coming in organically. Clients refer cases. They do some kind of marketing. Maybe they have a website. Maybe somebody just walks in the door. Maybe there is a billboard somewhere. So they do need to have somebody at the office that maybe can answer the phones. But as it's possible to have a bulk of cases coming in just from the referrals. It's especially easy for somebody who wants to, or at least initially is just a solo practitioner who doesn't want to have any staff, and they just want to work their cases and they don't want to worry about the marketing, trying to find clients. They just get all the clients from us.
Right. That makes total sense. And that's really cool. But let's say, I mean, I don't know what the number is, what, thousands, hundreds, what have you. But of the law firms we have that are working with Magic Law Group for that lead gen, for those referrals, how does it work if there's one case that's perfect for two firms that we have that are both our clients? How do we delineate who gets what? Is there a bidding system? How does that work?
Generally, we want to make sure that everything is being divided fairly. So we don't send the same case to multiple attorneys. We have them. Usually, we divide them like as the leads are coming in. We're like, okay, if we sign this up, this goes to that attorney. If we sign that up, that goes to that attorney. Sometimes attorneys have specific requirements, so we might have something that say, okay, this attorney only takes cases if they're around a certain geographic area because they only go to that particular court. So our intake team would know that, okay, this is an LA case, it goes to this attorney. This case is in San Francisco, it's going to go to that attorney. So we're just trying to make it work so that we don't have 20 attorneys in one city fighting over a single case, that we have them spread out across the country.
Now, what happens if a firm declines a referral? Does it go to like the next person in what would be called like a round robin, I'm assuming, where the leads just go even Steven?
Yeah, it depends on the reason for why they're declining. Sometimes they decline because the attorney says, look, there is no case here.
Oh,
So if there is no case here, and our intake team is pretty good at weeding out the most obvious ones.
I was going to say, yeah.
So if there is no case here, and our intake team is pretty good at weeding out the most obvious ones.
I was going to say,
So because we do train them, but they're not attorneys. They can't evaluate a case as good as an attorney can evaluate the case when they talk to the client. So especially for the more complicated areas such as employment law, for example, where it takes an experienced attorney to truly know whether or not this is actually something that can be worked into a case. So if they decline and say they don't have a case, then I'm sorry, there is no case here. If they decline and say this case is too, we don't have the capacity to take this, is too small for us, then we'll send it to the attorney who told us, hey, send me everything. I'm new, I'm starting out. I'll take whatever you can send them. Then they'll get it. So, and if it's something that they say this is too big, we can't take this. This is not just your regular car accident. This is going to be a massive class action. We send it to the attorney who can handle it and who is set up to take that kind of cases.
Right. So you'd say most of the qualified leads that we have through Magic Law Group, they are given representation. Like we make sure they are, right?
Yes. Yes, we make sure that they do find the attorney that will take their case, unless, and sometimes, the attorney says, I don't want it, maybe somebody else wants it. And then if a couple other people say, no, this is not a good case, then we tell the client, I'm sorry, we couldn't help you. But yeah.
Can you double referral a case? Can you have a referred case to a client and then the law firm refer it out to another client?
We generally prefer that if they cannot handle the case themselves, they send it back to us.
Yeah.
Because that's part of, usually that's part of our agreement with the law firm, because that's that's just kind of how it works, and it's not fair that if they don't want it, that they send it to somebody else when we have other attorneys that will take it.
Does that like Russian doll thing ever happen though? Where it's just like referred, 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 referred? Have you heard of that happening?
I haven't had that happen yet. I mean, theoretically it is possible, but we haven't had a situation where that became an issue yet.
Right.
So, and it's one of those random things that maybe it will happen at some point. It's not a big deal.
So when we're talking about incubation, it sounds very similar to I would say almost like an investor stage, like the early startup investor stage, right? So normally when you have a startup that's being invested in, it's typically an investment for equity. Is that how we work with incubation? Is the discussion about equity of the brand itself or of the firm? How does that work?
We get a share in the firm's revenue for the duration of the agreement. So it kind of works in a way as if we were referring the cases, but also it's, whatever cases the firm gets during the incubation period, we would get a certain percentage of the revenue.
Right.
So that's kind of like, it's kind of like you have two partners. One partner does the work, the other partner provides the funding to have everything done. And then we divide the proceeds from the cases between ourselves.
That makes total sense. I mean, but with the difference that we help with management and practice, the entire thing having to do with the practice, there's a lot of investors out there who once they invest, it's hands off, or they don't know how to run a law firm, right? So I think that delineation of, yes, it is an investment for with that revenue percentage, but you're also getting that management aspect, that building the bones, the scale of your law firm.
Correct. You're not just getting like a silent investor who gives you the money and then, demands money from you without the care, like what's going on. You're getting like a managing partner basically in your firm, that we're helping you run the firm.
Right.
So as an attorney, it's a lot easier because you can focus on working the cases and we focus on making sure everything runs smoothly on the back end.
And typically with a managing partner, especially someone that involved, you'd be looking at like 40-50% equity in a lot of cases. We're nowhere near that, all right?
No, it's not like that. I mean, it depends on the extent of the investment because some attorneys might come in and say, "Hey, I have money saved up, but it's just not enough and they want to invest their money." And so it will depend on the extent of the investment, but it is usually around like 30-40%, something like that.
Okay, gotcha. Well, with everything that we provide, that's really not a lot, especially when starting from scratch. I I wanted to chat about if I was a lawyer just graduating the bar, how would I get in touch with you? How do I as a lawyer start my incubation journey or start my practice setup?
Well, you can contact me. We can talk about it and see if you're a good fit and if it's gonna work out. There should be a link in the description where you can book a meeting with me to so we can chat and see how it works. Because it's very it needs to be narrowly tailored to a specific practice because there is no every attorney wants to do things differently. So it's not like a cookie cutter solution for every firm that works the same for everybody. So we would need to really sit down, talk about it, and figure out what their goals are, what are they trying to achieve, how do they envision their practice, and what we can do to help.
Right. That makes total sense. I mean, from what I heard too, it's not just like anybody can do our incubation. Like we're very specific on who we choose in order to invest that time, that money, that energy, because it is a lot. And you want to make sure it's someone that we can keep with over a long period of time, right?
Correct, because it is a partnership that goes both ways. So we are selecting somebody that we want to partner with. It's not like a service that we sell to anybody who wants it. It's something that we're going to be working with this person, with this firm for several years. So it needs to be a good fit for both of us.
Right? It's like it's an intimate connection
Correct.
because we're so close and we're just right there in the firm, right?
Correct. Yes. It's kind of like, as an attorney, you can look at it this way. You're selecting a partner for your firm. Are you just going to go with the first person that says, yeah, I'll join? No, you're going to need to make sure that this is a person you can work with and it's going to be a good relationship going forward.
It's got to be due diligence, right? And it's
Correct.
both ways
Yeah.
too. It's the attorney figuring out if you guys are the good fit, and then also vice versa, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, no problem. I enjoyed being here. This was fun.
Yeah, we'll have you on for some episodes in the future. I'm sure you have a lot of insights that we could glob off you because I think it's super interesting going from running your own practice to working with LegalSoft, especially our incubation practice setup. I think that there's a lot of knowledge to be gained there. So
Yes, for
thank you
sure.
so much for being on.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.